Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of NTI PodTalk. Today, we are talking to Adrienne Larrew. She is owner, founder, co-owner, co-founder of Corner Post Meats, which is located in the Black Forest area between the southern part of Denver and Colorado Springs. I have to, so first of all, Adrienne, thank you so much for taking time to be here today.
It's very fun.
Yes. So I always am concerned and concentrated on knowing food source, like knowing where my food comes from. And we talk about that in our school, knowing where your food comes from, you know, that sort of almost cliche saying these days, know your farmer, know your food, but it is true. And so I think it's really important to talk to the people who are producing our foods, so we have an idea of where it comes from, how it's produced, how it's grown, how it's produced, and all of the resources and inputs that farmers and producers put into providing the food that the rest of us consume, because the vast majority of us are not food producers. And so we are purchasing from other people. And I also have a personal mission to highlight farmers and producers that I think are really making good choices and doing good things for the food, us as consumers, our health, the world, the environment, all those kinds of things. So that's why I want to talk to you, because you are one of my favorite farmers. So welcome.
Well, thank you. It's awesome to be here and have this conversation. I think the thing that I always want to remind people is that how we invest our dollar and our time is something that is always in our control. And so that is one thing that we can always impact positively or negatively. And so I love having this conversation. So I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's kind of, that's one of our core values, that, making a difference in the world. And one of the ways that we talk about all of our individual ways that we make a difference in the world is to be aware of where you're spending money on your food, because you're eating food 3, if not more times a day, and you're spending money, and the checkbook speaks your values, your choices, and is the illustration of kind of what you think, maybe the illustration of what you think is important in the world. So we are in alignment with that. So all right, so I would classify Corner Post Meats as practicing regenerative agriculture. I don't know if you use that terminology, but that's how I sort of classify. So regenerative agricultural techniques. For those who maybe have heard that term but don't really understand what it means, or have never heard of it, can you talk about what that means? Because I have an idea of what that means, but I want, maybe I have something to clarify my understanding, or I want our listeners to know as well.
Absolutely. So I think, what used to be just deemed sustainable is now has kind of evolved into regenerative, because really the differentiating factor is that what we do on the land with utilizing our animals as tools to manage the land, we want it to be better every day, continually getting better. And so that's where that regenerative term comes from, is that we're improving things. I think then you can take it one step further into with every bite that you take of food, are you building health or are you destroying health? Whether it's little itty bitty or huge steps, I think it's the same on the land as it is with you. building health. Like that is the goal of everything that we do on the land, is to build health. And then in turn, that builds health in each of us in our community.
Yeah. So I was going to ask you kind of what that looks like on a daily basis or a weekly basis on your ranch, but I really like your term of saying that animals are the tools. So can you talk more about that and how that is exhibited in on your ranch?
Absolutely. So that's where the animals and how we manage their interaction, their impact, their grazing, all of that is that it stimulates the plants and then we allow it to rest. So we can't just leave animals in the same place over and over and over, for a really long period of time. That's detrimental to the plants that they're eating. The soil doesn't have time to recover and regrow the plants. And then like you're just kind of hanging out in your dirty laundry over and over and over again, like that's not cool. And so that's where we've shifted to using the term nomadic when describing our grazing, is that it's something that is continuously moving across the land. It's no longer just rotational grazing. I've started seeing a lot of people, where they're like, we rotate our pastures twice a year. Like,
right.
What? That's it, come on, like you want to change your underwear a little more often than that, and it's the same thing with your animals on the land. You want them moving to fresh food sources, to new ground, to fertilize, and to, if it's the pigs, like to root around and stimulate. You want them regularly moving on the land, not just camping out, hanging out at the exact same place, eating the same plants, fertilizing in the same areas. So that's where we try to use that term nomadic, constantly moving. That gives the land a chance to recuperate as well. I think that's something we all forget about, even in our personal lives, is like you need rejuvenation as much as you need stimulation. And so being mindful of that, like your rejuvenation time and your recovery time matches the amount of stimulation. So like the pigs, they can really stimulate the land. They root it up and they graze it and, do all this really cool stuff. But then you've got to get them off of that area and let it rest for a very long period of time, so that then the land and the plants are fully rejuvenated and are actually stronger because of that stimulation, instead of either overstimulated and totally wore out, or understimulated, had like the animals not been there, and that those plants would have just grown and then like kind of died and hung out and like, nothing. There's like no new good things happening. So that's where we use the animals as a tool, and that they're regularly moving to new ground.
So, okay, so we should just clarify, you raise pigs and cattle, other animals?
So we've had all sorts of other critters. So if you've followed Corner Post for a very long time, then you probably remember like when we had sheep and we had chickens and we had layer hens and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. Over the years, we have focused more on the cows and the pigs, and we've partnered with some other awesome businesses who do very similar to what we do. They just do it in areas that are more conducive to those animals. And so we can all kind of be badasses in our own realms, instead of trying to juggle all of the things and think we're the only ones in the world who can do it.
Yeah, right. So I'd like to go back to one other thing. So you were talking about how the pigs stimulate the land by rooting it up and kind of potentially digging it up. And then you said if we didn't have animals on the land, the plants would kind of grow, but they wouldn't be really vital and that kind of stuff. So can you talk about how potentially digging up the land is helping the plants to be thriving and be vital.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think a lot of us will think of like, oh, just leave it native, leave it natural. Like that's the best thing. Well, so in that native or natural state, there's gonna be like deer or rabbits or prairie dogs or elk or, something should be coming through and stimulating that land, whether it's through grazing, it's through trampling, it's through, digging, rooting, scratching, any of these things. There's going to be some amount of stimulation. And if you have your stimulation and rejuvenation in balance, then that is like the most like well exercised, strongest muscle that you can have. And like that's a thriving ecosystem. If you just have stagnant, where there's not grazing, there's not stimulation, there's not trampling from the hooves, then it's just gonna kind of grow and then lignify and die off and then just kind of hang out. And there's nothing keeping that cycle going. And so that's a pretty like kind of stagnant, barren ecosystem. It's like a poorly used muscle in your body. It's kind of there, but it is not nearly as like strong and vibrant as it can be. And that's the goal, is to have that like strong and well exercised, but in balance. And so like where animal agriculture, or just, agriculture in general can get a bad name, is like overstimulation and under rest, to where, you've turned everything into like the surface of the moon, because nothing can regrow. It's been overgrazed, it's been overstimulated. And you can do that with like vegetable agriculture as well. So you can overtill stuff to where then you've like literally tilled all of your beneficial soil microbes right on out of there. And then you've got to rely on chemicals and things like that. And like, it's just this whole kind of nasty cycle. And so that's that thinking through the that filter of like, are we building health or destroying health? Ourselves, the planet, the animals, like just it really can be that simple. Does this build health or destroy?
So I come from a very rural farm area, and it's very typical that after the harvest, what's left over in, very late fall through the winter is just brown dirt. And for my entire life, I thought that was, well, it certainly was common, certainly was normal, quote unquote, but that's a really ineffective way to manage agriculture, because while during that winter time when it's just bare dirt sitting there, you've got carbon being released, or I don't know, it affects things to the point where you start losing the vitality and the fertility of the soil. So I really like how you're talking about this, how you're using the animals as tools to, yes, dig up the soil, create some quote unquote harm to the plants by eating the plants, by, trampling a little bit, but you manage that within a short period of time. The animals move on. You intentionally move them so that land that was a little bit roughed up gets the signal that it's time to like really turn on all the recovery and repair, and it comes back even stronger than before. And now the plants become the really nutrient dense food for the animals the next time they cycle back through.
100%. You nailed it.
All right, good. So, whole thing about, the sort of older term sustainability, like you are generating a thriving plant life so that that's what the animals can eat. So you don't have to bring in X other inputs for the animals. I mean, there may be some input, but you don't have to bring in the entire input for the animals. And then the animals, because they are excreting, they are fertilizing the ground. So now you don't have to bring outside fertilizer in. So it is sustainable and enclosed sort of all in this very natural, nature-based system. So.
And that's where I think animal agriculture done right can be the best way to manage the land. Yeah. Where it's areas that you can't grow crops, that if you didn't have animals out here stimulating that land, helping keep that mineral cycle, the water cycle, you're just keeping everything moving forward. Without the animals, it's just going to become stagnant. Yeah. And so the animals are that catalyst to make great things happen. But like you said, you've got to be really intentional about it and really mindful. And what I love about the way that we raise animals is that it's like ever evolving and you're always learning. It's not this like perfect prescription of, X plus Y equals Z, and that's it every time. Like you're building this relationship with Mother Nature, trying to understand what does she need and how do we work with her best, and then how does that translate through the animals and through the plants, and it's like this whole dance of like trying to understand, how do we keep everything in balance and at its peak health. And like that's what's so fun and awesome about it. It is not prescriptive. It is not black and white. And that's what makes all of it thrive.
And I imagine that a lot of what goes into that variation and the need to adjust on a daily, weekly, monthly basis has to do with, how much rain you get, how hot it is, how cold was it during the winter, how much snow was there. I mean, all of that, I'm sure, plays a role.
Yeah, completely. Like, are your animals younger? Are they older? Are they like, what are your goals for that area of the land? Are you trying to, like maybe you're going to keep them in an area longer because you're trying to kind of reset the weeds that are in there, or, it's just like, it's so fun to try things and kind of see how it turns out, and always be assessing, and really, trying to communicate and understand. And like you said, like we've had an insanely wet start to the year, which is awesome. We were so dry coming out of 2020. And so having a wet spring, you handle things totally differently than having a dry spring. And so, yeah, it's so fun to go through all of that. And then on top of that, we have this amazing, joyful meal at the end of all of this hard work, and get to share that with other people like you and those within the NTI network, like other people who give a damn, and are really mindful about what they eat and the impact of the decisions that they make.
Mm-hmm. Well, you just touched on my next question, which is, you have sort of a tagline for the website, but then also something else that I saw. So, your tagline is "Meat for people who give a damn," and then also you have on your website "Mindful meat done right for the land and right for the animals." And I know it says also right to your door because you ship, but I really want to talk about the meat for people who give a damn, And then mindfulness. So, when people think about mindfulness, potentially they're thinking about being mindful in the context of meditation and thoughtfulness and all that kind of stuff, which is somewhat mindfulness. But can you talk about what you mean by meat for people who give a damn, and then mindful meat done right for the land and for the animals? And maybe we've talked about it already, but is there anything else that you have to say about those two things? Because they're obviously really important to you.
Yeah, so that was something, the meat for people who give a damn, in some ways kind of came out of excitement and frustration as we're trying to think about, how do we like simply explain what we do and why that matters, and like I started at the beginning of this conversation was like, we all yield this amazing power, and that is through like decision and through investment, and whether that's time or dollars, like that is like the most powerful thing in my mind. And so Dianne and I were talking, like, gosh, how do we explain all this? And like everything came back to like, well, you give a damn. Like that's why like that's why you're more intentional about it, or you're more thoughtful, or you're really like thinking through all of these pieces, and so it kind of resonated with us, and just that like, this isn't just a casual decision that a lot of people make about, what are you nourishing yourself with? And then you can add in all of these other layers, like, well, what's it doing to the planet? And oh my goodness, an animal gave its life in order for me to be nourished by this. And like, it can become like a very heavy, like drawn out thought process when you think through, like, what am I putting in my body? Like, this is what fuels me and nourishes me. It's gotta be the best. Mm-hmm. And so that's where the like give a damn came from, was that, it's not just like this, oh yeah, sure, I'll try those,
Yeah.
And then that's also, like you said, where that mindfulness came from, is that so many of us are on a health journey, whether it's because we've had poor health and we're trying to, navigate through that, or we're just trying to live our best lives and nourish ourselves to the highest potential. And so being mindful about what you fuel yourself with. I mean, this is like one of the most intimate things. Like, you're putting it in your body to fuel you. And it's kind of crazy the crap a lot of people fuel themselves with, and then wonder why they don't feel fueled. Right. And so being mindful about that, and like I said, kind of all of the layers that can go in it, that really just it just kind of stuck out of like, it's not a fly by the seat of your pants, like, picking up a Slim Jim at the 7-Eleven when you're getting gas. Kind of a deal of like, this is something, many people are very mindful, very intentional about, and it comes from a place of giving a damn.
Yeah. We talk about how what you eat, because of the nutrients and the chemical constituents of your foods, it has a direct conversation with your DNA. And so, that's like a pretty important thing. So I totally agree with you.
Yeah. Like, do you want that to be a good conversation, or do you want that to be like a really angry conversation? Like that is something, that, yeah, making sure that like, that is like a super solid, enjoyable conversation. I love talking to people about like, what conversation is your body having with you after you eat? Mm-hmm. And like, are you really listening to it? Of like, you know what? I'm super gassy after I eat that. Or, gosh, I feel flushed. Or, whatever those things are, like, that's your body saying, I want more of this, or no, I don't.
Right.
And, you know, whether or not you listen to that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I want to shift just a little bit and talk about it's becoming kind of more and more common about with these messages that are being relayed by government agencies, other public health recommendation places where they're sponsoring like Meatless Mondays or Meatless, you know, whatever day of the month or whole month or something like that. And what that tends to do, these campaigns, what they tend to do is that they tend to give the impression that we should be vilifying animal sourced foods, and we have to try to eliminate animal source foods. And I want to be very cognizant and acknowledge that conventionally raised animal foods are abhorrent for the environment and for the health of the animals and for the health of us. And so that is part of that messaging, and I completely agree with that. But what's oftentimes missed is that it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. There is an in between, and that in between is better meat. So you know, how do you respond to these messages of vilification that are really being sponsored by large voices that the public is latching onto and failing to recognize that what they're talking about may not be quite accurate?
So I think there's like such a hot button topic right now, and I appreciate that, like, you're trying to kind of strip away the layers on that and like, okay, how do we recognize what they're saying, but like what is at the core of this? So I think there's three pieces to that. So one is, regardless of what other people are saying, no matter how popular they might be, or, you know, powerful they might seem or whatever, that listen to your body as to what you feel the best on. Because, so like personally, I consume raw milk. The government does not agree with me on that. The you know, many celebrities and sports stars and, you know, whoever else don't agree with me on that. However, I feel personally, I feel night and day different when I'm drinking raw milk versus not drinking raw milk. And God forbid I had to drink, you know, commodity pasteurized milk. Like, and so that is something I have to remember. I am my biggest advocate for my health. And so I need to keep that in mind first and foremost. I think another funny thing with what is being pushed is like, what are the motivations behind that? Using the raw milk as an example, you know, if you research back to when they decided to go from raw milk to pasteurized milk, is like, what was the money driving that? Who's buddies with who? And, you know, some of those things. And so just consider the source. You know, I don't think that you need to second guess everything everyone says and become like a conspiracy theorist, but consider what is the motivations behind that. And then I think the third thing that I find humorous in this response, and I can't take credit for originally saying this, I don't even remember where I heard it originally, but like from a Meatless Monday standpoint, is like, why is it okay to eat crappy meat 6 days a week and take crappy meat out once a week?
Right.
Like, what if we just ate good meat that's good for you and good for the planet? You know, like, let that be the shift. And like you said, it doesn't have to be so black and white of, you know, vegetables are good, or like whatever sketchy soy-based, like weird meat alternative thing that they're creating, or that, I mean, there's a lot of commodity agriculture, vegetable, animal, or otherwise, that like done at that scale is just, it sucks for the environment on either side, you know, whether it's hundreds of acres of vegetables or hundreds of acres of, you know, confinement feeding pens for cows. Both is a really crappy place to be. A bug, a deer, you know, a rabbit, like any, yeah, absolutely, any of those things. And so I think it's all about, you know, making that shift to something that is more mindful, something that maybe checks more boxes on the like pros versus cons side, to where like, oh, okay, I could eat, you know, mindfully raised meat that is done right for the land and the animal and makes me feel great. Wow, like that is a better option, and that is like this third option that they kind of never really talk about.
Yeah. And that's really my concern with it, is that that's not being talked about. It's either a, you know, you include it or you exclude it, and there's no discussion of the reasons why. And certainly there are many reasons why someone would want to either include or exclude animal foods, but I think it is really important for them to recognize the impact of their decision on the types of foods that they consume, whether it be animal-based foods or plant-based foods. Because as you say, plant-based foods are just as guilty of environmental degradation and, you know, poor farmer welfare and poor health for those who consume those foods. So yeah, I totally agree with you. So anyway.
Well, and I think that's where that mindfulness comes in as well, is that even if you only eat, you know, animal proteins one day a month, like,
that's right.
Don't let it be the manager's special ground turkey at Walmart that, you know, that turkey was raised in confinement, never saw the light of day. Like, just because that's health, you know, turkey is a healthier protein, like, it's that mindfulness, you know, like take a step back and think about it one step bigger, and do your best with where you're at, you know. Like, I think that's the other thing, just like how it's a continuum and an evolution of knowledge, you know, working with Mother Nature. It's the same thing with your health and your budget, and, you know, what you're fueling yourself with, is that work to make better decisions and support, you know, the values that you believe in and the businesses that match that.
Yeah, totally agree. All right, well, I'm just looking at the time here. I want to be respectful of your time, and I so much appreciate you being here. I could go on and talk for a really long time about all of this stuff, but I recognize that you probably have things to do today, as do I, but I like having these conversations much better than doing my work. So, but I will say that we're going to end it here. And I am so appreciative of you. I'm appreciative of your passion, your advocacy, and your honesty and your openness. I'm just very appreciative of all that. So thank you so much for being here, and have a great spring and great vibrant ranch experience with the upcoming spring. So
yes, I'm so grateful for the opportunity to be here and to have this conversation. I think that's where this conversation is so important, and I'm you know, grateful that you are continuing to spread that word through NTI and your students, and that is something that that you're bringing light to. And so well done on that. And it is such an honor to be your rancher. And without you, there is no us. So thank you for everything that you do to support us. And then also, like I said, spread the word. So more people are thinking about this and making, the best decisions for their health and the planet as possible.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks. Have a great day.
Great. You too.
All right. Bye, Adrienne. All right. Nice. Thank you. I'm so sorry. I literally did not realize that we've been going for almost 45 minutes. So I apologize.
I love I love this kind of stuff too. So I'm right there with you. Like, oh, it's been how long?
Good. All right. Well, thanks very much and really have a great day. And I know I'm on your Facebook Live. Is that next Friday? I think it's next.
Let's see, next Friday or maybe in two.
Maybe. Yeah. I do have it on my calendar. I just don't have it memorized. So I know it's coming up though.
Yes. Well, I look forward to that. Is there anything specific that you want to make sure that we touch base on for that?
No, I think however the conversation flows, how long is it?
So it seems like 15 minutes is what I always like to hit, but it's so easy. I mean, just like today, it's so easy to go like closer to 30 minutes. And so that's why I'm like, okay, how do I really think through like being succinct and what to say? And so, but like you said, I mean, it's just so easy to like get excited and just, and then this and that. And so it's, yeah. Super fun.
Yeah. I think, I can talk about the nutrition side of things. I can talk about, nourishment and health and optimal wellness from nutrient dense foods. So I can talk about all that kind of stuff and kind of focus in on some of the nutrients that are that come only from animal foods or come most reliably from animal foods. So I can talk about those as well.
Yeah, that sounds great. I think that's a really good point. In fact, I was just trying to pull up my little notes sheet in order to see what day that was, and then if Tiny Mama had any.
Yeah, her request to me was to talk about nutrient density.
Nice. Yeah, that sounds awesome. And I like the, from the perspective of animal proteins. And so, that it, obviously most people in our network think about it more from like, yes, I know animal protein is awesome. But I think that's also reminding ourselves of that helps arm us in conversation with friends, family members, neighbors who, did just listen to some random YouTube video of some celebrity spouting off about how you should eat Impossible Burger with, 400 ingredients or whatever it is. And so being able to then respond with some of those pieces, I think is awesome. So I love that.
Yep. Good. Will do. All right. Well, thanks very much. I will let you go.
Fantastic. We'll have a great day. Thanks again. It was so much fun.
Yep. All right. Bye.
Bye.